Welcome to the Peaks Island Radio interview series, where I'm joined by Peaks Islanders doing interesting things on the island. This week, I'm very pleased to be joined by Jo Israelson, Lisa Huston, and Wiley Davi, who are talking about their roles in the upcoming production of A Reason to Dance, a play written by Jo Israelson about the history of Peaks Island. In her words, it combines a little bit of history and a little bit of mystery. The play runs for one night only, August 14th at 6:30 p.m. at the Greenwood Gardens. I think a good place to start would be talking to you, Jo, about how it came to be that you were writing plays about Peaks Island.
I think part of coming from the local history of Munjoy Hill and having grown up there and spending my summers here on Peaks, there's lots of stories that float around when you're a kid, but for me, I was too busy in the water or, avoiding something. Somebody who was trying to make me do something dangerous or picking up something like a jellyfish or all those things they have you do to just prove that you can be a true island ocean person. So by the time I came back here, it's been about 15 years since I really returned for every summer. My mom was ill. I came to sort of help out with her. And as I became more aware of how many stories that were untold on the island. There's family stories people tell and don't tell, and then there's island stories people tell and don't tell. And I started researching it. And the first one, the trilogy of the 3 parts, Hats Off, The Trunk Show, and then A Reason to Dance. The Hats Off piece was about the 2 women who ended up helping to pass not only the 18th Amendment, but the anti-bird killing motion of shorebird protection and keeping women from wearing feathers in their hats saved the seabirds. And this was the Davi sisters, and they were amazing women on the island. And the Davi sisters led me to other stories of people who were here that became famous, that did amazing things that I had never heard of. And I went through the school systems in Portland. So that became my task. And my current artwork that I do also connects current events with historic situations. And Peaks Island has a lot of them.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit about what folks can expect coming to this show, A Reason to Dance, and what that cross-current between current events and history might be like?
Ooh, okay. Well, let's start with the reason I came up with a reason to dance was I just felt like we all needed a reason to dance lately. And I was feeling that the thing that brings most of us together usually is something like a party or an event or a bar mitzvah or a wedding, and we're dancing. And so that's where the idea came from. And tango, that was kind of a crazy piece of it because I was looking into the history related to the show and discovered that tango basically developed when immigrants were coming to America, South America, Europe, and it had an entire travel that touched almost every major country. And I like the notion of having a play in which everybody connects. And the way they connect is, of all places, not only on Peaks Island, not only in the club, the Lions Playhouse, but their feet connect. And so with the place and with each other. So that's where the idea of putting tango in the middle of a play came from.
That's great. So to take that as a springboard to talking to Lisa about Lisa, I know, and maybe you were involved in Hats Off too, but I know that you were involved in Trunk Show where you had the challenge of directing a play that was meant for the stage that became a radio drama that went back to the stage. In terms of this play and in terms of getting folks to do tango and that sort of thing, what's the experience been like directing this one with Jo?
Sure. So I love working with Jo because Jo is very detail oriented and Jo is like a big dreamer and likes to imagine cool things that are really fun to put up on their feet. And so it was a blast working on the Trunk Show. It was a bit of a longer process, and I feel like we felt a crunch of time. Even though we've been sort of thinking about this show for 2 summers, the Trunk Show was more like 4 years in the making. And so which is a lot of time in theater, to be honest, like probably too much time. But So, this one's a little different, but I did want to honor people's time. Like, I feel like in order to be a true community theater, we want to support people who are working in Portland. We want to support people who are vacationing here. We want to, work our way into a busy venue like the Lions Club without a lot of impact to their schedule. And so I just like to keep everything tight. And so we use Zoom, which was a great, side effect of COVID. So we've been on Zoom for most of the summer together because we had people in Vermont, we had people in Portland, we had people here, we had people on vacation. And so we did Zoom at first, and then we just come together the last few nights together in the Lions Club to put everything up on its feet. So doing this sort of staged radio play format with like microphones and people holding scripts. The actors are very comfortable with their lines, but it also takes the pressure off of like a newcomer to the stage who hasn't ever memorized lines, or someone who just doesn't have time in their schedule. Like, we have people who are medical professionals in our cast and doing all different types of jobs and taking the boat and traveling, and it just makes it a bit more lighthearted and fun to do a staged reading version. And we have blocking and dancing and other fun stuff,
and costumes
and props. Yeah.
Buckets this time.
And projections. We have projections.
That's right. I went big on technology this time, which some people would think I might have gone a little too far. But we have technology and we have a live orchestra.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing in and of itself. Tell us a little bit about the orchestration.
So we just Joe wrangled up some people on the island. And of course, Nancy 3 is a very loyal friend to Joe, and now I consider a friend of mine. And so Nancy's just awesome. Like, with the accordion, she knows all different styles of music. So like, even teaching the dancing, she's just playing the right beats for the right dance. And so they're sort of coming together and bringing other people in. Joe can say more about that.
Yeah, the most amazing thing is people do not understand how much creativity is on this 5 by 3 mile island. I have someone who is retired from the New York Symphony playing bass. I have a flautist that's well known. Bobby Kipp will be conducting. I believe it is her first formal conducting appearance. I'm not sure. She really likes doing it. She's known as an oboist with the local Boston people. Elena Henry's in there playing flute. And I just had this idea that you can't really have dancing without a live orchestra. How ridiculous, right? So I just said, would you mind playing music, during the show? And Nancy and Bobby went off, came up with every piece of music. They sounded fabulous in the space. And there is something magical about live music and people dancing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And so I think a couple of the things that I see as threads here are that there are people that come to this island with an awful lot of talent for whatever reason. It's sort of like magnetic for people who are creative. And then also, in some sense, you're also really magnetic in that you come up with an idea like this and you find people and you say, hey, I think that you'd be a great fit for this. And then people are like on board and they want to do it. One of the newcomers to your productions is Wiley, who is also here with us. And I would love to hear a little bit of Wiley from your perspective, with this being your first production with Joe. How did that come to happen?
Well, I think we were at Lions Burger Night, and I was just enjoying my cheeseburger, and Joe sat down and said, I have a proposition for you. And as she presented it, it was a part in a play inspired by a character in a sitcom. I don't know that I should give much away just yet, but people will see if they come to the show. And I would have no lines. And as somebody, I have never performed in anything like this. And so I thought, I can do this. And I've since learned that I do have lines and have had to learn some dance moves. So there's something about Joe's approach, I think, that sort of draws you in and then you're stuck. But in terms of, the creatives and the island, I think it's also, there's something about their passion and their commitment that it's just infectious. I mean, I think about it with Jo, think about it with you. Even somebody like Thea with her Adopt a Tree program, or Faith and Larry with all the music on. I mean, there are just so many individuals. It's not just the creativity, but they care so much about what they love and what they do. You just can't help but want to be part of that.
I love that. That I think is very true. So I think probably all four of us have come to the island at different times, and I would be willing to bet that same sort of energy has been here from sort of the start of each of our times out here.
Well, according to the Trunk Show, if we look back at what we found out in all my research, I mean, theater has been going on here. It was the first summer stock. So that was in 1890s. So people have been acting and doing drama here since the 1890s. And there were times when there were larger theaters, smaller theaters, but there's always something. I can remember going to the elementary school and watching a couple of performances that kids did. And it's a part of the fabric of this place to be standing up in front of other people and communicating. And I just happen to always add a little bit of history and a little bit of mystery to this show. So there's some very interesting things about people that no one's ever heard of that became famous that were here. So I consider that my task of telling the world that Peaks Island is a place for creativity and for just support and generosity and caring about others. And what more could you ask for in a community?
No, it's true. And so I moved up here. It's going to be a year next month. And I moved up with my mom, who had dementia. And I remember relatives saying, "You're moving to an island? How is this going to work out?" And within days of our being here, there was just this people from all different corners of the island who are willing to help and to support me and to support her. And when I think about the play, it seems like a microcosm of that. Like, I remember people saying, "Well, how would you describe the island?" And magical was the word that came to mind. But since being involved in the play, I think the play is about community, the storyline, and what we're doing as a theater group is community. And I just think all of that is reflective of what makes Peaks so magical.
Other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I also think that when Jo talks about putting kind of modern day situations like in a context of history, I think what's so great about this play is that Jo has brought together this sort of band of like misfit toys. Like, we're all, from different places and spaces and different talent levels and comfortability on stage and with dancing. And but there's some really important things illuminated in the play about like politics and reporting the truth and charlatans trying to sell you a product. And it's something, like if I open my phone every morning, I see that theme come across my feed on my phone. But somehow it's more palatable and I can do more creative thinking about it in the context of the play versus like what's being like splattered across my phone in Washington and whatever's happening around the world. And so I feel like even though it's fun and lighthearted and we want people to have fun and we want people to find a reason to dance, I think they're also going to learn something. And to me, that's a really important part of theater. And I think that's what makes the art on Peaks Island maybe feel a little bit more real or something. Like, I live in New Jersey, so I'm surrounded in the tri-state area with like Philadelphia and New York and like really legitimate theater and legitimate artists and worldwidely famous things. But I feel like when I come to Peaks, like everything is so earnest. And I mean, even Peaks Island Radio, just coming from like an earnest place and like wanting to get real people's stories out. And so I feel like that's what I really like about these projects, is that it's real people that Jo is researching. Right. And that history is sort of repeating itself all the time.
All the time. And that's the piece that most people don't know is this came about because my friend's home burnt to the ground in 20 minutes. on the island, and I watched it and lived only watching. And I started doing research on fire on the island, and it turns out that that segment of this island has never had water, has never had enough water to fight fires. And so the reason we have buckets throughout the show is that in 1899, a group was trying to put a fire out. It was mostly women working at the time at the top of Rockbound Park. And it was an establishment for artists and people who had been there doing theater, etc. And this fire broke out. It lasted 3 days. By the time the fireboat got to the island, they couldn't even pump the water from the ocean to put the fire out. So that started me thinking, if that was 1899 and my friend's house burnt down that fast, not that much later, in terms of life, there was a story to be told. And so I researched Tolman Heights, researched Rockbound Park, and found characters that I have never heard of, including things like someone who spent 20 years bringing rocks from New Hampshire. From New Hampshire, I want everybody to hear that. They brought the stone from New Hampshire to build a 50-foot tower on the top of Tolman Heights, and were given a permit to do it, way back in 1905 or 1906. We have someone who wrote theater, Seda Cowan, who became Cecil B. DeMille's right-hand woman. And it goes on. And then my favorite character that I uncovered, or discovered, I should say, his name was Charles Lewis Fox. He was a wealthy philanthropist who was a socialist, and the socialist movement was very big in the early 1900s. And water was the issue because there wasn't water for everybody cheap enough that they could get it. And Charles Lewis Fox believed that everyone should go to art school that wanted to go to art school. And so he built an art school. And he also was advocating for libraries being open on Sunday so workers could read. And so there were all these amazing people that I'd never heard of that sort of contributed to the development of what a place of creativity and caring was like in the 1900s. That actually is being duplicated today as I speak. There are people doing fundraisers for a variety of things, and the island raised money for my friends and other people who've had all kinds of things that have happened to them. And I just think the characters I have unearthed are just too good not to have them on stage and for us to all be joining them in what they believe.
Well, and also, and this is building on something both of you said, given where we are right now in the political climate, you can feel so hopeless. And it's odd for me to say this now because I was involved with a painter for about 20 years and didn't get it until now, in that art is a form of problem solving. And I've gotten to watch this up close. And I mean problem solving at the micro level of what are actors going to sit on stage, to how are we going to solve this major find a replacement for a person who might not be able to perform, at all levels. And that's really thrilling to think about art as the way to solve problems so that you have hope instead of feeling hopeless, which I think right now, going back to a reason to dance, is something we need.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to stick with that idea for a minute. So Lisa touched on something about, being from New Jersey and then sort of seeing things online. I feel like one of the themes that I wind up talking to people about a lot is that we are sort of chronically online and that we're chronically seeing the world through some sort of filter like that. What do you think the role is that people come to this space to sort of physically separate themselves, right? Like we're literally physically away from Portland. What do you think that has to do with getting us to a place where we're talking authentically like this and creating authentically like this?
Well, if you just go from the concept of being on an island, right? And when the ferries stop running at night and you have a problem, you have to rely on the people who are next door or across the street. Or, I needed a bunch of 5-gallon buckets. Well, where does one get 5-gallon buckets on an island when you've decided they all have to be the same color? Well, you just put it on a little notes to people, and all of a sudden you wake up the next morning and there are buckets on your porch and in your car and on the grass. You have to rely on the people you have a connection to. Just because you're on an island doesn't mean you will be assisted unless you have some relationship. And I think that's the difference. You don't have to have one on the mainland, because you can drive someplace else, or you can go shopping at 2 a.m. when the water heater blows up or whatever. But for me, the island says we have to take care of each other. It's what goes on here. And all the other islands in Casco Bay for sure. Peaks has an unusual setup where they have, I believe, 21 nonprofits on this small island that support you from having to have chemo treatments and getting rides to the hospital. It's amazing. Out of not that many people all year round, like 1,000. So that, to me, the island depicts the place where you have to be connected. You can't survive here unless you are.
Yeah, and I think, like, for me, coming from away for the summer, and, I work at a boarding school. It's like a very relentless lifestyle that we have back at home, like a 24/7 kind of lifestyle. And so when we come here, we're seeking, like, solace. We want to, literally, I just tell my students back at home, like, I go there to stare at water. Like, I just go to recover and, like, be connected with the sun rising, the sun setting. Like, when we came out of the theater last night, it was just this amazing sunset, and we're like, and Joe said, we're so lucky to be here. So I think, like, nature is part of it too, that we're seeing beautiful rocks, so that makes it more preposterous that someone would bring rocks from New Hampshire to here, because we have amazing rocks on the island, and stones, and whaleback, and all the sites of the island. So I feel like part of it for me is, like, being more connected with nature, and so therefore not always being on my phone or not needing to be on Wi-Fi or whatever, because I think the nature also just brings us, like, back to a grounding place, a recovery place, like a healing. And so then people are more vulnerable and open to meeting people and forming those important aspects of community.
Yeah, this morning I had one of those insolvable problems, and I just walked out the front door and I said to myself, you're not thinking about this. You are walking the island. You will walk the entire island, and then when you get back home, you can think about this. And I spent the morning while I was walking taking photos of favorite places and sending them to people and saying, this is what I'm looking at this moment. I'm thinking about blah, 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 blah. And one of my friends wrote back and said, you will determine, is the project worth going forward? It was like getting one of those little, Chinese messages in a cookie or something. And I'm like, oh, okay, yes, I will. And I kept walking. And it was an amazing morning because dead low tide, but everything was shrouded in fog. So the sparkle on the water was like just shimmering diamonds. It was beautiful. It's very hard to worry about car insurance or anything else at that moment, because that's the gift. You have the moment. And I think being on Peaks Island, I am much more aware of moments.
I hate to use the word noise because I've only been on the island for a year. So I've been in all that noise my entire life, but I am so mindful of the absence of the noise, whether that's neon signs or the McDonald's or the billboards on the highways, or and to come here and think about the winter months where if you can't find something, you suddenly, when you cut through the noise and you're just in the moment, as Joe was describing, you see what you do have and the resources. So you might not have access to something on the mainland, but then even you're looking for an ingredient to cook a meal, suddenly you open your cabinet and you make something amazing out of what you do have, because you start to pay attention to what's right there in the cabinet instead of being distracted by all the excess.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's a somewhat common theme among artists, right? Is this need for attention. and to be able to like hone your attention, to be able to really see and then create from that. Um, Before we wrap up this particular part of the discussion, when you write, Jo, I wonder if a lot of that writing happens in an environment like this. Like, do you think to yourself, I will have time and space to write when I'm on peaks, or do you find a way to take that and bring it with you and make space elsewhere as well?
I know there is no time when I get here. Trust me. Even if I'm here 6 months, it just seems like I'm either continuing research, looking for people, looking for props, whatever. I live in a town, almost the exact population of Peaks Island in the winter. It's very interesting. The town is around 980 people, and it's about the same on Peaks. So there's something about that magic number. It's like in Africa, they discovered 60 is the magic number for a village. So when everyone was dying from HIV, they made sure that they never built a kids' community bigger than 60. That's a Quaker group was doing it, did the research. So I feel like 900 is my magic number here. I do most of my writing back in Maryland when I'm there, but I do all the research up here. So everything on the island, the Fifth Main, anybody with books in the basement, I go over the Maine Historic. They're getting, I found this fabulous 1906 edition of the Socialist Democrat newspaper, and I got to make a copy of it to use as a prop. I mean, who gets that? You can't just get that online. You have to go talk to the people at the Historic Society. So, yeah, that's sort of how I function. So I write when I'm away, and then I process, and we reconfigure everything. We've had to make all kinds of changes because of issues with buildings and weather, and it just goes on and on. But underneath it all is still believing we all need to have a reason to dance.
Great. And let's shift for a moment to the dance part. So I had the luck of being able to attend, I think it was the first rehearsal for the dance part.
Yes, it looks much better now.
But one of the things I was really struck by was just how like willingly everyone jumped in and tried, right? I think a lot of times where I've been to even just dances where people voluntarily show up to dance, there is a reluctance there or maybe a holding back. And it didn't seem like that with this group. Could we talk a little bit about how that was born or how that was crafted?
I don't really know, but I was also impressed by that. Like, because I work with a lot of teenagers, and there's a lot of reluctance with some of the actors that I've worked with over the years, and I think, I don't know if it was just the personalities of the people, and also Caitlin is an amazing dance teacher.
Right. Caitlin
like
Osborne.
I need to give her mad props because she's teaching these dances in a very limited amount of time. She just knows how to explain it. She jumps right in there with everyone. She didn't really give people a chance to not agree to what she was asking them to do.
Right, and she's about 4'8".
Yeah, she's like this tiny
but
little
she's
horse.
in control of the crowd.
And like it's just amazing. And even last night when we showed up for like a more technical rehearsal in the space, she came right over to me, wanted the game plan. We set a game plan, and then she just like took the reins and did it. And I think people felt comfortable with that, right? Like she's organized and efficient. And so people were like, yeah, let's do it.
And she cares. Yeah. And she's new here. She's another newbie. She's like Wiley. I don't know how long they've been here. Not a year, maybe. I think she said. And the willingness to take, she works full time, and to take her background knowledge of the history of dance. And she actually did a program that we can listen to on Peaks Island Radio, which is fabulous, with Rick Ashton, and info on on tango music and all that. But I think and everybody trusts. I think that's the piece I was thinking of. What makes the difference? They trust that we are there for a reason. They trust me with my writing. They trust Lisa with her directing. And I think they believe that if they trust, then there will be an outcome that they'll be proud of and have fun.
Well, that's the key word for me. And I think about that in so many things I've been involved in on Peaks. And I think these are fantastic educators, because if you create a space where people are willing to learn and feel safe enough to just have fun and not worry about making mistakes, not worry about being embarrassed. And that's the settings that I find myself in over and over again. So, I didn't know the first thing about those dances. And I know this might shock Jo, but I am a self-described introvert who is painfully shy. And so you just don't suddenly get me to do the kinds of things that they're getting me to do unless those folks are saying yes. You're asking a question you're not sure, and their answer is yes. Just go with it, and we'll make it all work. That's pretty phenomenal creative space to be in.
Yeah, really. I think that's a huge testament to just the kind of community that you've really developed around the show in particular.
I know, I'm a small corporation. We sat down one day and I listed the number of people I was interacting with on a daily basis. And I had 32 immediates. And then I had the auxiliary crowd, building up for the next phase. And there's a reason I go to sleep early. I've decided I'm really tired at the end of the day from talking to people. But I think for me, I do community-based art anyway, and theater has become another form of it. Usually I'm doing installations and working with nonprofits and bringing together disparate groups. And film, I've done film and working with different immigrant populations and putting it all together in something that's just my vision. Whereas this, I have to integrate other people's visions. I have Caitlin's and I have Lisa's and I have Wiley's, and we put things together, and then it's the collaborative effort that I really love. I am like most artists, we want our vision. But at the same time, for me, part of my vision is to include other people. And not all artists are like that.
That is true.
Yeah. And also, Jo, I like to affectionately say Jo is a relentless person. So, like, if there's something that needs to be done for the show, like, what makes my job really easy as a director is that, like, I know Jo is going to source 12 buckets, like, with not a problem. Like, I know Jo is going to figure out projecting something in the Lions Club. Like, and so that makes it easier for me that, like, part of her personality as an artist is the, like, pursuit of the vision with flexibility. I mean, like, able to pivot, able to do problem solving. But, like, that's very comforting as a director to have, like, I consider Jo a producer, really, like an artistic visionary producer. Like, she's relentless. Like, she was at our door this morning, to get a glass of water. But, like, Jason and I joke
but
around.
I'd already
that, like,
walked
when we hear
island.
when we hear the knock at the door, like, Jason's like, it's probably Jo. Like, where he's like, Jo's creeping up on the back porch, and so, like, she's just always thinking and always willing to put in the work. And so that makes other people, I think, inspired to put in the work. We see her working hard. We see Steve Devani, like, staying the entire weekend to get everything going in the Lions Club. Like, then people want to put the work in to learn the dance steps or to find their costume. And so I think it's, the relentless nature of our visionary.
And we need another word.
I mean, I think it's pretty accurate.
It is accurate. I'm not saying it's not accurate, but if I were putting it on my bio, putting down relentless may not be
your
something.
Relentless pursuit of visionary excellence.
Right. Well, and I think I am a visionary. There's no doubt about it, because who would ever come onto the island and say, okay, I want a live orchestra. And
tango.
Tango. I want to teach tango to people first. And then as part of the show, we'll do tango. And I want a projection that are telegrams from Helen Keller. And that's the piece that everybody goes, what? What do you mean Helen Keller was here? Helen Keller was on Peaks Island 13 times. She danced at TEIA. She was known for being able to row a boat and being great entertainment at parties. And she was a rabid socialist. If you want relentless, J. Edgar Hoover had an entire, I requested her file and it was all redacted. So she did not stop. If she saw an injustice, she named it. And I try to do that through the art, the same thing, that I call for people to see something they may not see in reality.
This may be the answer to that question, but I want to ask the three of you as we wrap up, what is it that moves you or energizes you to do this, to do this creativity? And we may have gotten a hint of your answer there, but I'd love to hear from all three of you on that.
Like this particular project or creativity in general?
Creativity in general.
Yeah, so to me, just creativity is like life. I mean, like it's to me, it's part of like breathing and eating and sleeping. Like if I'm not doing projects, then I'm not alive. So that's why I keep doing things. And my role at school, I used to be the director of theater at my school, and then I became an administrator, but I was still kind of dabbling in theater courses, and like I don't teach any theater anymore. I don't do any of the plays anymore. So like I kind of have to do, some people back at school were like, "You're crazy. Why are you doing that up there?" And I'm like, "Guys, you know me. Like I have to be doing it, right? And if I'm not doing this, like Joe knows, I'm like sewing baby quilts and like making stuff and doing like if you're truly an artist, you live to create. And so that's what I feel like. It's part of just what I do every day to stay alive.
That's great. Wiley?
I don't describe myself as an artist, but if I sit here and I play the ukulele with the Peaks ukes and the guitar and, probably produce things in some way, but not as a self-described artist. And I think being on this island and doing the things that I've been doing, for me, it's community. It's the connections I get to make with people, the time I spend with them, the way I get to see the world through their eyes, their problem-solving skills, and it's so thrilling to get to be part of that type of community.
Fantastic. And Joe, will end on you.
Yes. If I'm not creating, then I must not be breathing, because I cannot live a moment without thinking of something in terms of solution, not problem, or imagery, or a feeling about a place, or even something I've discovered and, learning everything there was to know about Seda Cowan, that, at 16, she was a prodigy. And at 40, she worked for Cecil B. DeMille, and she lived in the house that was built by the crazy guy who brought stone from New Hampshire. I mean, really, on Peaks Island. So I love those connections, and I like making links. And I think that's probably the best description of my artwork. I link things together that people go, "Oh, I never thought of that." And so I have a kind of a strange little brain that puts things in a place that would not normally be there for people to look at. And hopefully at the end of the show, they'll have learned about some interesting characters that inhabited this space and all did good things, which I hope people think of us doing the same.
Right. Yeah. Right. 100 years from now. Well, thank you all so much. And I very much look forward to seeing the play on Thursday, and also to hearing the reviews, because I think one of the other great things about the island is the feedback, right? Mm-hmm. Like,
Yeah.
And it's not just the person who's writing, the review for the paper. What your friends and your neighbors think. So,
right.
Which is great.
Thanks.
All right,
thanks,
thank you all.
Chris, for doing this.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this interview with Joe, Lisa, and Wiley. Please do check out the show, A Reason to Dance, one night only, August 14th at 6:30 p.m. over at the Greenwood Gardens. If you like hearing these conversations and you want to keep up with what's happening with your neighbors, you can subscribe to the podcast feed of Peaks Island Radio's podcast. You can find it in Apple Music, Spotify, and anywhere you can get your podcasts. You can also go to our website, peaksislandradio.com, and subscribe for email updates, where you'll get a monthly newsletter with all of our recent releases.